Hey Gateway, this is Pastor Jason Crabtree. Welcome to Gateway Midweek. We're so excited that you invited us into your home tonight. And tonight I have a special guest that I don't have to be 6 feet away from. And so this is my wife.
Hello, I'm Denise.
And so we figured we're getting, it's close to Valentine's Day, this coming up this Sunday. And so we thought, hey, we would do a special Gateway Midweek and have my wife here. We've done some other midweeks. We've done some live things at the house, and we've done some cool things like that. So it's cool to be here together. I don't know, as my voice just cracked. It's cool to be here. So, anyways, and so now I gotta compose myself. Maybe share a little bit about what you do. Maybe people don't know you and don't know a little bit about you. So.
All right. Well, first, I'm wife to Jason. We have 2 kids, so I get to be a mom to a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old. And that amazes me that I'm surely not that old. And my day job, I'm an assistant principal for Visalia Unified. Just started this year, and I'm loving that. Tackling that in a pandemic has been interesting, but enjoying making connections with coworkers and staff and students. We have students on campus, so it's just a blessing every day. In fact, today we had a kiddo that was late getting picked up, and Grandpa was just so worried. And I said, no, it's been great. I got to know her and talk with her, and it was just so refreshing, and it was a win to be able to chat with her. And so he felt a little better. But yeah, that's what I do.
Good. So she's been, here and part of Visalia community and the teaching. You've been teaching now, man, over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
Has made a huge impact on the community, and so in a lot of different ways. So super proud to be her husband, hey, when we join every week on Wednesday nights, ongoing theme and ongoing lens that we look through everything at as we have conversation is Gateway's purpose, which is invite, connect, develop, and serve. And within that purpose and all of those different aspects, there is relationship. As you invite people in, right? There's relationship that happens before that. As you connect with God, as you connect with others, that's all relationship. As you develop as an individual, you learn how to make relationships work and become better. And as you serve, right? You're serving outside of yourself, which is a huge part of relationships. And so, the Bible talks a lot about the importance of healthy relationships. So when we thought about, okay, what are we going to talk about? I said, well, let's talk about what it means to fall in love. And so, here we are at Valentine's, here on Sunday, and then as we talked, we thought, well, hey, not everybody is in love right now. Not everybody is married. But everybody has relationship. Everybody between family and friends and coworkers and everything in between, right? Like, we're all in relationships. And so the Bible talks a lot about and the importance of healthy relationships. In Galatians 5:14, it says, for the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. In Philippians 2:3, it says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves, right? And so there's just a few. There's countless other verses that talk about the importance of how we need to interact with those around us. And so what I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit tonight, and with the help of my spouse here, and is that anything that is important, it takes time and energy. It takes care for it to be strong and healthy. And relationships are definitely important. And we're created to be in relationship. And there are a number of things that fight against having healthy relationships. And it is key to know what those things are so we can be prepared and kind of, be able to know how to best respond in those times of stress in relationships. And so the one thing that we kind of want to talk about tonight is the busyness, how busyness hurts your relationship. And I don't know about you, Denise and I have talked about this. We just both feel like we're just so busy, like all the time. And so I don't know if you have any initial thoughts about just busyness, so.
Yeah, I think sometimes we think of busyness as just always on the go. But I know for myself, busyness is sometimes just busyness of thoughts, getting bogged down in the thinking of things that are going on. And so sometimes I say, well, I'm not really that busy. But really, like, your brain's going 100 miles a minute. You're thinking about this, or you're thinking about that, or you're thinking about what's next, or what's happened, or all those different things. So sometimes busyness isn't just a physical act of being busy, but sometimes it's also that mental act of being busy and preoccupied, I guess would be a better word. And that affects then how you connect with other people, because I think if my brain's going a mile a minute, then it does affect how I'm interacting with the people around me, and then who I'm connecting with.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it. We have a specific
yes.
example that we'll talk about.
Yes, we do. I'll save that for later. I'll put a pin in that.
Yeah. So how does busyness hurt your relationships? Well, first, it corrupts conversation. It corrupts conversation. On average, we spend about 3 minutes a day in meaningful conversation. Only 3 minutes a day in meaningful conversation. Think about that, and think about that in context of how many minutes and hours a day you're spending talking to individuals. And within that, thinking only 3 minutes are meaningful. I mean, I think that is unbelievable. The most of our conversation is information driven or commentary about non-important stuff. And when I say about information driven, I think about, like with Denise's work, like she's interacting with teachers, with students, and most of the conversation is, hey, don't forget we have this meeting tomorrow. Don't forget there's these forms that need to be filled out. Don't forget that this area needs to be cleaned, right, and fogged. And hey, don't forget we've got this going on, this meeting tomorrow that we have to be in. And hey, I'm not going to be here tomorrow because there's teacher training. I think about in my daily work, of just, hey, don't forget we have a meeting tomorrow. Don't forget we have to talk about what these things are going to look like. And I mean, there's just constant, when you think about the conversation that is going on, that is just information driven. But the other thing is, or it's just commentary about non-important stuff. And this is what we were talking about earlier, is just the other night, Denise was, she had just came home from work and we just got done. Or I think I was in the middle of eating dinner, and Denise had just finished dinner and just going on to the next thing to do. And so I decided in that moment, this is a great time for me to go into detail about a documentary that I had been watching. And so I just started in, right? Like, hey, let me tell you about this documentary, which was important to me, but I could tell very quickly that Denise, she was not interested in hearing about this documentary. Because she didn't ask me, like, hey, why don't you tell me about this documentary? And so again, we're having this long conversation of just non-important stuff, right? It's just commentary about things that really don't matter, And so
in my defense, though, I really was attentive and listening for the beginning part of it, and then it was kind of, I think I ended the conversation with, I don't think I have to see that documentary now.
Yeah.
I'm good. I know how it ends.
Yeah, that's right. But really, I think, what those kind of things, what they come from is the fact that we don't feel like we have time to go deep, so we don't go deep. Like if we don't feel like, I really want to get into this conversation, or there's certain things that we need to talk about in our relationship, or there's something that I really need to share with you, or maybe that other individual needs to share and we need to listen, but we don't feel like we have enough time to really devote to having a good conversation. So instead, we just don't have the conversation. And I think that, busyness has a tendency to do that. And I know throughout our, we've been together, we talk about Valentine's and remembering relationship, right? We started dating November 5th, 1994, right? And so I get brownie points for knowing that date.
I think it was November 4th, but.
Was it November 4th?
I don't know.
November 5th, November 4th? It's in November.
It was in 94.
It was in 94. And so, there's been a lot of years, right, of just, we've had really good conversation. We've had deep conversation. We've talked about, our life and family and the future and things that are going on in the present, things that we're dealing with, in our own worlds, but also in our own relationship. But we've also have said, there's not enough time to go deep, and so we just avoid the conversation. We don't go deep. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on.
Well, I think of work relationships and for myself this year being in a new position in a new place, but also in a place that's very restrictive in the sense that there are no face-to-face gatherings. We're dependent on a lot of Zoom, and Zoom's not the best for having those conversations. And I think we get caught up in the busyness of just the mechanics of life. This has to be done, that has to be done. Here's this, we got to accomplish this, and we need you to do this. Just the mechanics of the day, and not taking the time to that personal piece, the compassion and developing that with each other. And I know for me, it's been a struggle to get to know people in a new position because I don't want it to always be just the mechanics or me saying we have to do this and do that. And so that busyness is just the mechanics of the day to day, how to get through and get things done versus taking the time to, even in some cases, it's not just actually having to talk, it's just taking the time to listen. Like in this moment, it matters, and what you're sharing right now matters. And so we're just going to stop what I'm doing, and I'm just here to listen, and that's okay. And sometimes people find themselves, when they're bending your ear, so to speak, oh, I'm so sorry, you're so busy. No, it's okay. Right now, it's okay. I want to hear what you have to say or what you're sharing, and taking the time for that, because we, like you said, we get so caught up in the mechanics of everything or the long plot lines. But I need to say, it's okay. I want to hear. You need to hear the things, and people just need to know that sometimes it's just listening too. Yeah. In the conversation.
Sure. So when we talk about how busyness, hurts our relationship and how it corrupts conversation, I think the reverse side of that is we need to make time for deep conversations. Like you said, in those moments to go, you know what, I can just set aside work for a few minutes so I can listen, so I can be present. Because deep conversations don't mean our conversations all the time. Deep conversations could mean just a few minutes of being able to just focus in on what the other person's saying, hearing what they're saying, and then, maybe setting another time to come back and revisit those things. So it's important to make time for conversations. Another thing that busyness, how it hurts our relationship, is it steals your fun, right? If you feel like you're always running out of time, like you're just sprinting to just keep things going, right? You're on the hamster wheel and you're doing everything you can not to fly off, you forget to just enjoy the ride. Right? The point of being friends with someone, the point of being in a relationship with someone is that you have fun doing it, right? You create space and time to laugh. And I think that is a huge thing in our relationship as a couple, with our kids, with friends that we have, is that we take time to just enjoy life, we were just the other night, we were watching TV and something came on that just really, I guess, hit our funny bone. And we just started.
It really resonated with us.
Exactly. And this one just started laughing, in some ways at my expense, but that's all right.
All
that's
of it
all right.
his expense.
But we were just like laughing. So yeah, it was good. And then you come away and you're just like, man, it just does something to your spirit. It does something to your relationship to just laugh with one another. I think about my kids. Just the other day, we were having a conversation, and my daughter says, you're talking to us like you're one of our friends. And I said, I'm talking to you like you're an adult, right? You're 19. And so, but just in that conversation, we were just laughing. And we were actually talking about Grandpa getting a new VR system. And so what that possibly could look like. And so we were just enjoying, but I think it's so important to make time, right? Because busyness steals your fun. You're constantly feeling like you're running out of time. You don't have time to enjoy life. And why would you want to do that? Like who would want to be in those kinds of relationships that aren't fun? I don't know if you have any.
Well, it makes me think, we're all affected differently in the times that we're living in right now. And I think of friends and people I've connected with in new ways that are longing for that laughter. Because for them, it's I go to work, and oftentimes it's Zooming all day, and then I perhaps live alone, or which is just with my family, and I don't have outside connections outside my family. And sometimes it's just that finding the joke and the humor and and that you're human and you're compassionate. And I think of a conversation that I had with a friend. It started as a work conversation, but then turned into, 45, 50 minutes of just laughing and having fun and making jokes. And I needed that, she needed that, and it was good. It was meaningful too, and it also helps to build that relationship. And I think a lot of times your relationships with people and connections start based on fun and laughter for the most part.
Yeah.
Some kind of shared connection.
Yeah, I think that's key. It's so I think we talk about how busyness steals your fun. Again, the other side of the coin is to make fun part of your schedule, make fun part of your relationship, right? Is doing those things. I think, I was thinking about the importance of spontaneity, right? Of just going, you know what? Sometimes I can put certain things aside. The world's not going to fall apart. Let's just enjoy the moment. Let's just enjoy the, what's happening in that moment. And like you said, find the space of where laughter is going to be there. Find the sense of humor in things. It does something to your spirit. I think it's so important to having healthy relationships. And so the last thing we want to look at when we talk about busyness, how it hurts your relationship, is it erodes your soul. If you are busy enough, long enough, you will eventually become spiritually bankrupt. And that is so true. As you're going about your day and maybe you're getting up early, to maybe hit the treadmill or do something, along those lines, and then you get to work, and then you're home and you're fixing dinner, and then it's been a long day, like you said, Zoom meetings or whatever's going on, and then hey, you just put your head on the pillow and you're asleep, and those days can spin together, and before you know it, like you have allowed life to just over encompass you, and God is no longer existent, right? You're not spending time with God. When you don't make time for God, your dreams and passions will start to feel non-existent. I know during certain seasons of life of just the busyness of things and not allowing God to be the center of things, I realized that I no longer have the passions that I used to have. I no longer am dreaming the dreams, and of things hoped for, and imagining the great things that God can do, and being a part of those things. And if you let your time go on, those things become non-existent, right? It just erodes at your soul. And so, the best part of relationships is doing God's adventure together. And I think that's one thing, and maybe you can speak into this, but it has been fun to do the things that God's called me to do those things with my family. I think about, when we were in Nashville, and then we got the call to possibly do ministry in Washington. And I remember them saying, hey, we want to fly you and your wife out and spend some time here and have some conversation. And I said, hey, my kids have got to come too, right? Like, they're part of this adventure, right? So they're, and so that was great. It was a great adventure of all getting on, for most of us, get on planes for the very first time and going across the country. And so doing those things together, I think is so important. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I do. I just lost it for a second. I was just listening to the story. I was thinking back, like I was remembering a time when we were sitting around the table when we were in Tennessee, and we were thinking about, we were talking to the kids, and we were saying how we feel like this is what God's calling us to do. And Nathaniel is a third grader at the time, and he just says in his clear state, he goes, well, I just don't know that God's calling me to do that. I mean, he may be calling you to do that, and that might be the call on your life, but I'm just not sure. And I just remember sitting there stunned like, okay, well, let's pray on that.
Yeah, you're in third grade. You're coming with us. You're coming with us.
I'm sorry, I got stuck in that story. I was just kind of replaying that idea. But again, talking about having that focus on God. And I think that's been important in our family, in those highs and lows, and being rooted in Christ. And I think about, I'm lucky to be in a conversation with a small group of people on Sunday evening, and just talking about that perspective of being in relationships with others and in connection. And I think of that, you can get so caught up in what's happening in the world and the things that are around you, because so many times it's bad, negative. And then also we can sometimes get caught up in, for some people, what other people are going through, and well, they're made that choice, or they're making that choice, and And I had to be reminded that we all have a story, that God loves each one of us. And then building those relationships, that's where you make those connections. And we need to always be with that frame of mind of God's love, and God has so much for each of us. And so I think for me, and in those connections, and I hope people see that in my interactions with them. Those are just kinds of things I think about, because again, that busyness can then, those connections just become business. So we're busy, but then those relationships just become business. We got to take care of business or this or that, versus relational. And then I think God wants that from us. He's like, we don't need to be that busy. Let's step back and take the time, listen. Sometimes it's just listening and being still. It's a reminder I need to be reminded of daily.
Yeah. I mean, and the Bible talks about, right, as iron sharpens iron, right? It talks about don't just look to your own interest, but to the interest of others. And just thinking about, like how cool would it be, in your relationships to ask somebody the question like, what are the dreams that you have? Like, what do you think God's calling you to that's huge, right? Like really outside of yourself. What are you passionate about when you think about how God wants to use you in your everyday life? And then having that conversation and then responding with, all right, well, let's circle up and let's make that happen, right? Let's do this together. And I think that is so important, right? And when we talk about how busyness erodes our soul, I think, again, the other side of that is spending biblical life-giving time with God and with others. I think that is so key. As I look back with, over the years of just different relationships, and it's just been so fun to do God things with close friends, right? It really does something to your spirit. It's exciting. I know me personally, when I've had those conversations with people that I get the opportunity to, work with, people that are leaders here at Gateway, asking them, hey, what do you feel like God's calling you to do? And then hearing the stories, hearing these things that they say, here's my dreams, but they're never going to happen. And then say, no, we can do that. Like, let's do that. Let's put that into motion. Let's make that happen. And then actually watching that come to fruition, right? And seeing God use them in mighty ways and in ways that they never thought and imagined, and seeing them in those places. And just knowing that, hey, we did that together. We walked side by side and we leaned on each other and we cared for each other in those moments. And so it does. I think it allows us to, because in the busyness, we can just set those things aside because they seem too big and not important, or like we're never going to be able to accomplish those things. Yeah. So we just put them away.
Or we go on autopilot.
Yeah.
It's so easy to take our Christian faith and walk and just put it on autopilot. Well, I just do this, and I go here and I go there. And we forget that relational piece of it, of just being in relationship with people, in connection with people, building the relationship that kind of naturally then leads to a point where they maybe walk into a relationship with the Lord. But sometimes that busyness of, it's just a checkpoint, we do this, and this, and then we're not then living it out on the other side of being in connection with others and walking out those dreams, or what do you want to see happen, or what do you want to do? And
So I mean, the busyness of life, it definitely, it hurts healthy relationships, and I think that's so key. I mean, as we're here on this kind of, as we're progressing towards what does it look like to reopen and be back indoors, and how do we keep the safety and health of others a high priority, and those, as you look, right, people are getting vaccinated, things are moving, the numbers are coming down, thank God, and we're able to kind of see, we're able to kind of get back into certain routines of life that we used to know. And I think healthy relationships, right, making that a priority, making it important, and making time for fun, making time for deep conversations, making time for God is going to be key as we continue to go back into a way of living, right? And so as people are able to come outside and start to do more things, what does that look like, and how in those relationships can we help people along and point them to Christ, and have deep conversations, and have fun while we're doing it, right? I think that is so important. And so
I think one thing I would add that as we're talking, I think sometimes too, in the busyness and the connections, we can get lost and forget. Sometimes it's putting our needs and desires aside, not like kicking them out the door, but moving it aside for the moment, because maybe what that person needs is something different than what I might desire or what I think they need or anything like that, but putting that to aside and in those conversations being what does that person need in that moment, and focusing there. When I think of, just in the times that we're living in and everybody has different opinions, I think sometimes it's being able to stop and move our own stuff to the side, and then listening and meeting them where they're at to build that relationship.
Yeah.
Too, because it's new people. We talk about changes. That's one of the things I have reminded myself that it's not always about me.
Yeah.
Except at my house, it's always about me. But just kidding. But it is, I think, sometimes taking that moment to say, this may be what I think and believe about certain things, but it's okay if I put that to the side to hear where that person's coming from and building that connection and that relationship.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a Christ-like attitude, right? Like Christ set aside his own needs so he could be in relationship with the people that he loves dearly, which is us. And so, it's very much a Christ way of looking at it, right? Like putting, like you said, putting your needs aside and not forgetting your needs, right? Not saying they're less important,
right.
But it's just like, hey, you know what? I can put those aside to help with the needs of those who are in front of me, because eventually I'm going to need help too. And so I think that is so, that's a great point. It's a great point. So, hey, that kind of concludes our time. There's so much we can talk about with healthy relationships. There's so many examples that we could give of what not to do. and
give the whole plot line of a documentary.
Yeah. So, but you weren't going to watch it anyways, let's be honest.
I wasn't. Not now.
Yeah, not now. And so, hey, we want to thank you so much for joining us tonight for Gateway Midweek. I've enjoyed doing these. I've enjoyed getting to know different people, and so we've got a lot of exciting things that are coming up in the weeks to come. And so I'm really looking forward to continue to share with you in these Gateway Midweeks, different ideas, different things that help push us forward and keep us connected. I want to remind you, or I not necessarily remind you, but just share, I shared a few weeks ago about the importance of staying connected. And a while ago, last year, we started Circle Up host groups, which is your people, your place, your way. You can go to gatewayvisayah.com/host and find out what that looks like, to be able to gather with people in your own neighborhood, in your own family, and have spiritual conversations and move things forward. And so each week for Circle Up host groups, Pastor Ed or whoever preached that weekend puts together a little 2-minute video that has an aspect of what was talked about during the sermon, and maybe 1 or 2 questions to kind of focus on. And so what we've done is we've decided to post those through our social media and online every Sunday. And so it's in the afternoon. So I want to encourage you to use that resource, right? Use that resource to maybe at work during lunchtime, or in a Zoom meeting, or maybe within your family around dinner, to watch that quick 2-minute video, talk about the questions, dive deeper into the sermon. And it's a way that it's a resource and a thing that we want to put in your hands to stay connected and to go a little bit deeper in your relationships, and have Christ be the center of that. So I want to encourage you, if you're still looking for ways to get connected, that is a way to do it, right? And it doesn't matter how many people are there, if it's just a few people, if it's online, if it's in person, or however you feel safe to do it. We want to just encourage you to stay connected. And so I wanted to remind you about those Circle Up host group videos that come out each Sunday. I think it's 3 or 4 p.m., but they'll be on all of our social media. And so again, we also want to just encourage you to join us this weekend. We've got services online. Our choir and orchestra is at 8:30. The worship band is at 10:30, and we meet here in the parking lot here on campus at 10:30, outside on Sundays. And so we've got our kids service at 9:45. And so again, there's a lot of things happening, and so we're glad that you're staying connected. We're excited as things are progressing and things are moving forward. We're going to continue to look at what it looks like to reopen and how we're progressing through that. again, we're looking at it through how we keep everybody safe and healthy and do that and move in the right direction. And so I think Pastor Ed said it in his update this week. Be patient with us, stick with us as we continue to move forward. And that's just a huge part of healthy relationships, is going, hey, we're going to do this. Like you said, I'm going to move aside my needs and be a part of things that are moving forward. And trust me, church, we want to get back together. We have been worshiping. We want to continue to move forward with different options. And so we want to encourage you to, again, to stick with us. God's doing amazing things. We've got baptisms coming up. We've got baby dedications. Life is still moving. God is still doing amazing things. And I'm glad that you're joining and partnering with us through this journey. And so thanks so much for being here. Thank you for joining us. I know you're a busy person.
Oh, so busy.
and so I appreciate you. And yeah, this is the better half of our family. There's no doubt.
We make each other better.
And so I'll take that. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight for Gateway Midweek. God bless Gateway. God bless community. We'll continue to connect with you because that's what we do. Have a great rest of the week.